Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it is time for one of our favorite annual traditions, the Black Stripe Draft. It's really my favorite annual tradition because it is a time for me to go back and look at previous years and go, hey, I won that year and I won that year and I won that year. But Tony, listen, maybe this is the year you will win, or maybe my streak will reach 4. Have we done more than 3 of these previously? No, I don't believe we have. So, Tony, I think you might be on an offer, unless my notes app list, which only goes back to 2022, is inaccurate. I don't know that you've ever won this.
Tom, speaking like a true Michigan fan, I believe history only started in 2021, blah, blah, blah. So welcome, everybody, to the Black Stripe Draft, or as I call it, Make-A-Wish for Tom. So we are going to have our Black Stripe Draft, but we are also going to invite you, the listeners and viewers, to compete against us with this. And we're talking, Tom, like, try to come up with a better top 5 than what we will come up with, and we will share our top 5s on the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus, where you can find that. And there will be a prize for the winner, and it'll be something good. It'll be something that you'll want. But frankly, I don't see anybody, unless I let them win, beating me, frankly. Mm-hmm. And Tom, you get pretty lucky sometimes, so you might be okay as well.
Yeah, it seems like you've let me win every time we've done this, and I certainly have thought that as you were picking. I was like, is he letting me win because he's terrible at this? So maybe, Tony, I will in order to allow you to set this up so that I can win again this year, I will let you have the honor of deciding whether you want to pick first or second and third. We do this sort of snake draft style. So if you pick first, the other guy picks second and third, and then the original person picks fourth and fifth, and so on. So there's not, there's some strategy here as to whether you want to be the guy who takes the number one person. Last year, I think you might have decided that you didn't want. I think
I let you have Jeremiah Smith.
Yes, and that was a great strategy. Congratulations! You're basically a Big Ten defensive coordinator. Well done. Are you Al Golden, sir? Congratulations. You can now be the Bengals Black Stripe Draft coordinator, I guess. Because that was not singling me up on Jeremiah Smith was not a good move last year.
No, and my number one overall pick, who was second, was Aaron Scott. He ended up losing his Black Stripe 10th. So it was a difficult season last year, but again, it's not my fault. I blame the players, as always. This is always on them. Hey, I have all of the faith in all of them. That's why I picked them. And if they choose not to live up to my standards, then yes, I am going to blame them. So, Tom, I will go first, which has me concerned for this player that we would both choose number one overall. And I'm going to take Devin Sanchez, the cornerback, who is there's some, I think there's a good top 5 here, but for me, he is the definite number one. Has been around the program for a while, clearly, and has been locked in on being a Buckeye and has all of the physical tools and all of the seriousness that you would want. So that's why I am taking him number one overall. Tom, you would have done the same, correct?
Yes, I absolutely would have done the same. And I think that's this is not quite as easy a number one as we had last year with Jeremiah Smith. It's similar to a couple of years ago when Carnell Tate was number one overall, and Carnell Tate went third. Jermaine Matthews went number one overall. But I mean, like, if you look at the names that we're talking about here, these are all guys who've gone on to have very good and productive Ohio State careers. All of them have been significant contributors. Usually at the top of the class, you kind of have a pretty decent sense, like, these are the guys you're going to see probably involved fairly early. So yeah, I think Devin Sanchez absolutely would have been my number one pick. He was your number one pick. We probably should set this up, I guess, a little bit with some of the, this is not always exactly the order. If you were going to rank how great these careers turn out, it's not always, exactly in this order. There are certain positions like offensive line. No disrespect to the offensive linemen, you almost never see an offensive lineman lose his black stripe early. That's a function of the offensive line. A lot of the times the interior defensive linemen are kind of in that same group. But the big thing that really pushes guys down these boards is if you are a summer enrollee. There are only 3 summer enrollees this year. It is defensive lineman Epi Satanale, cornerback Jordan Woods, and tight end Brody Lennon. Those guys are coming in with a 6-month, everyone else has a 6-month head start on them. So you are going to probably hear their names later in this than you would have otherwise. So, if you are a friend or family of an offensive lineman or a summer enrollee or an interior defensive lineman, no offense, this is just how the black stripe process typically plays out. So, don't take it personally if you do not hear your person's name as high up as you might want to. That's also probably good advice for people who are going to try and compete with us on the Huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. So, all right, Tony, I get the next 2 picks. And I think the number 2 pick to me in this is fairly clear. And then it's kind of like, which of 6 or 7 guys do you want to pick from for the next one? So I'm going to take what I feel is the most, the most likely very high off the board person, and that's Quincy Porter, 5-star wide receiver out of Bergen Catholic, North Jersey. Wide receiver is a spot where we've seen guys lose it relatively early in the past, and Porter is someone who comes in. He's got the size to be able to sort of physically be ready to compete relatively early. Brian Hartline's probably going to be working him into rotations, and he's going to have opportunities, and they're going to be throwing the ball a lot this spring. So he'll have an opportunity to potentially get, show out. He's physically ready enough that he's probably someone who's, holding up relatively well in the weight room and all that kind of stuff early on in this process. So that's my pick number 2. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are I'm the only person with the bravery enough to say that Quincy Porter is somewhere between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jeremiah Smith. So, and that's registered trademark on all of that. Mm-hmm. I'm interested, Tom, do you think this happens in the spring? Because there have been receivers in the past 2 springs that have lost their black stripes. Now, again, those are Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith. Could he get in there? Very possibly. When Mark Givler and I did his Skull Session recruiting podcast, and we talked about the 5 biggest impact freshmen, like the 5 freshmen who will make the biggest impact this year. I had Quincy Porter in my top 5, and I did have him in my top 5 of this draft. However, I had him number 5, Tom. So now you're at the disadvantage where I'm going to be able to get 3 of my top 4 guys at the very least.
Sure. Well, as history has shown, you getting to pick the guys you want to pick puts me at a huge disadvantage where I've only once again won 3 years in a row. And I don't know that I've laid out the dominance. I should lay that out real quick. In 2022, 5 of the first 6 guys to lose their black stripes were on my team. 2023, 5 of the first 6 guys to lose their black stripes were on my team. Last year, top 2 guys to lose their black stripe, both on my team. And the scoring on this does go 30 points for the first guy, 25 points for the second guy, and then 20, 19, 18, 17, and so on below that. So there is a huge emphasis on getting the first couple guys, because those are the ones where if you nail those first 2, number 1, you've probably correctly identified some of the big future contributors in the class, but also that's, if you don't actually clap, the camera doesn't change to you. So people can't see you just sort of miming clapping. So do you want to go back and sip Diet Coke disinterestedly? Okay, that's fine. All right, fine. We'll move on. Now here's where we get into this. To me, those are kind of the 2 clear top 2 picks. And then after that, I have a tier of 7 guys who I look at and go, I could pick this guy now, and it's entirely possible that this guy will be on my, still be available for me to pick after Tony picks his next 2, because it's kind of just a cluster of guys who are all kind of similar in terms of their likelihood of, these are probably mostly guys who are going to lose their stripes early to middle fall camp, more so than spring. But I think the next guy I'm going to go with, Tony, I'm going to go with Riley Pettyjohn, linebacker. Oh, good. I've disappointed you. Now listen, maybe that means that it's not a good pick because it's a pick you wanted to make. But anytime I can disappoint you, I feel like that's that's always, it brings joy to my heart, even if it doesn't mean it's necessarily going to work out well. But he just sort of fits the mold. Big, played big high school, big school, Texas high school football. Like, he sort of fits the mold of the kind of guy who comes to Ohio State and is a little more prepared than others to be able to sort of step in and play at that level and make an immediate impact. And frankly, there's not as much depth at that linebacker position as there is at some other spots. So he may get more opportunities to rep with the twos, certainly the threes and maybe the twos this spring. So I think he's a good third pick there.
Yeah, I think he's a very good third pick. He was my number 2 overall. So now, like with Riley Pettyjohn, TJ Alford, it's hard to separate those two.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I have Alford as my number 3. So I'll just go ahead and take him here, and we can just lump in the linebackers together, because everything that you're saying, I can say the same thing for Alford. It is a pretty thin group, and there's an opportunity to get in there. Plus, these are two, and as I was telling Mark Givler on the podcast we did, like, if you talk about these two to James Laurinaitis and you don't also mention Eli Lee, he's going to stop you in your tracks and be like, don't forget about Eli Lee. And so I think all of these guys have the right mentality and the tenacity that he's looking for. Now the question is, will the former 3-time All-American, who's done it at a very, very high level, be willing to be like, okay, you guys have done enough. You deserve to lose your black stripe. Or is he going to be like, I'm not seeing 3-time All-American status yet. Like, I'm not seeing you. It's like, dude, we're just freshmen. Can you cut us some slack? No. We don't cut slack around here. So I'm going with TJ Alford as my second pick and the 4th overall pick. My next pick, as we turn the corner, my 3rd overall pick and the number 5 overall pick of this entire draft, Tom. This is where we start to get, like, I have like 13 people that are all kind of like, take these 13 first, and then like there's 13 that are like, take these 13 last. And it's kind of like what the group that you were talking about. I don't want to get too far into it, but you know who you're talking about. I kind of want to get on the offensive train here, because you're already there, but instead I'm going to go with safety Fahim Delane, who is my 4th overall, my number 4 player on my board. So that gives me Devin Sanchez, TJ Alford, Fahim Delane, 3 of my top 4. So I just really like him. He's big. He is athletic. He's physical. And again, there's an opportunity for him to get into this 2 deep and make some plays. So that is my number 3 pick, Tom.
Yeah, he would have been the next person off of my board as well. I think Alfred was a great pick as well. These guys are all kind of, I had a group of, that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys that I kind of have as like, here's the top tier, most likely to lose their black stripe by August 10th or August 12th or something like that. And all the names that we've talked about are all in that group, even the ones that you've sort of mentioned in passing as well. And also, don't forget, and so these are all fairly interchangeable at this point. But yeah, I think Fahim Delane's a very good pick. There's a lot of little stuff that goes into that, and he's, again, we talk about guys looking like they're physically ready to potentially play, or within, you spend a month with Mick, and then you're not kind of completely physically overwhelmed at the start of spring ball. He's also someone who, we saw him in Columbus at the indoor practices in the Woody, even before the Tennessee game. Like, he's been around the team just a little bit longer than a lot of other people. You've had certain guys who've been sort of around the team a little longer. That's someone who I think is going to be, is that little bit of extra head start, I think, is going to help. I had him high on my list. That's one of the reasons why. All right, so boy, now I've got 4 more guys from this group, and I am really torn as to who to take, because you've got, you haven't touched anyone on the offensive side of the ball, and I've got 2 offensive players and 2 defensive players here, and I'm kind of tempted, Tony, to sort of play the odds and say, well, the offensive coaches are going to want to have someone have the black stripe off someone early. They're not going to want to let just to be the defensive guys. So I'm kind of tempted to just take the 2 offensive guys here and then have you freak out and reach for some, reach for some guy who's way down your board. Just, listen, we've all seen a Jets draft. We've all seen a Browns draft. I think we know where this is headed. So I think I am going to do that. Tony, next off the board for me, I'm going to take Tavian St. Clair. And I think this is something where last year, Julian Sayin, almost said Julian Edelman, Julian Sayin was the second guy to lose his stripe. That's very early for a quarterback. You do, however, have with Tavian St. Clair some of the stuff I just talked about with Fahim Delane, but even to a greater degree. Tavian St. Clair, physically, we've seen him grow and develop quite a bit over the last couple of years. He's also been around the building so much. He's been around the Ohio State football program to an incredible degree where he's probably, I'm going to guess he is not brand new to the playbook when they, he sat in a lot of these meetings already. It's going to take a little while. This is someone who's going to have a little bit of a jump in competition. Talked about Riley Pettyjohn and TJ Alford going from like big division Texas and Florida high school programs where, the level of competition is not going to be this enormous jump. Tavian St. Clair has the physical tools. He's been around the program enough that I think he's probably going to have a little bit of a head start in terms of learning the playbook and all that kind of stuff. But he played at Bell Fountain. Bell Fountain is like a relatively small school, small division high school team and program. So this is going to be a pretty big jump in terms of competition for him. So I think this is not going to be an immediate black stripe, like, oh man, day one, this kid could be a contributor. I think there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. But man, it just feels like he's been around the program. He's been viewed as kind of a leader in the class. All of that stuff. I think he's going to be, not someone I'm expecting to lose his stripe this spring, but would not at all surprise me to see him lose it before the season this fall.
Yeah, and he was somebody I was hoping to get into the next turn because he's actually higher up the depth chart than Julian Sayin was last year when Julian Sayin won it and lost his in the spring. Like he's the number 3 quarterback, so he's going to get plenty of reps to either sink or swim. Now you're betting on the fact that he is going to swim, but also, like as you just said, and as I always tell people, like he played against farmers. No offense to farmers, but that's who he was throwing against. And so I don't know. The last farmer for Ohio State was Cade Stover, and he wasn't really out there defending the pass. But there is going to be a serious level of that he's going to have to get to. But also, I'm absolutely convinced he can get there. So I think if all goes as planned for him, he could be a guy that loses it pretty early just based on the number of reps that he's going to get. And as long as he's impressing, then don't be surprised if they kind of do that to show like, yeah, you're in it, keep going, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that he's someone who there's a wide error bar on when this could be. This could be very early in August. This could be middle of the season. It just sort of depends on how he sort of adjusts to that college program, college life. Next up, boy, I really want to take one more offensive player off the board, but also, man, I really want to take this next defensive player that I have on my board. And now I've got to decide which one you're more likely to let slip 2 picks to me. So,
well, I will tell you, my next 6 on my big board are offensive players. So,
okay, well then in that case, I'm going to take Bo Jackson, running back. Was that the next pick for you?
Yeah.
Yes. See, this is why I win every year. Just anticipation, excellence. I mean, intellect. I mean, it's all there, Tony. It's the full package.
It's the order of the picks, man.
Sorry, I apologize. I should have let you choose whether you wanted to pick first or second. I think Bo Jackson he's another guy who is, I think, physically perhaps going to be in a spot where he's able to be a contributor early, where it's not, I go back to like Evan Pryor or Jalen Gill, some of those guys in the past where it's some of the guys who are a little on the more slight side or the smaller side, where it maybe takes a little bit of time for you to be ready to do all the stuff that Coach Laughlin is going to be looking for. Carlos Laughlin is like, yeah, he wants you to run, and he wants you to run hard. He wants you to run through contact. He wants you to keep your pads down and all that stuff. Can you pick up the blitz? That's going to be like the first thing. If you pick up a blitz like Travion Henderson picked up a blitz, that's where you're going to lose your black stripe. You're going to have a big, you're going to contribute, show that you can be trusted in pass pro. You can be trusted out of the backfield. You can be trusted to hold on to the football. I think Bo Jackson checks all of those boxes just a little bit more than the other running backs, just in terms of like immediately being able to potentially do all of those things. So yeah, he is my number 7 overall pick in this draft.
Yeah, he was going to be my pick in this next round, and now he's not.
Well, what I would recommend is that you freak out and start reaching for lots of offensive players now, because what you want to do is you want to listen. This is when you go. You're like, well, Kyle Brady, tight end. That's what I want to do.
See, now it's like, now as I look on my board, it's still defensive guys, but one of them is a guy that I've just like, I wonder, like you have a feeling about, so you throw him up the board. It's like, I don't know that I necessarily need to do that. I could probably slide him back down because of the fact, me having this thought, like, I just have a feeling about him. Like, that doesn't mean you have a feeling about him. It's like, so
the Seinfeld where George has to do the opposite. Like, don't get the chicken, get the tuna. Yeah.
So while I am talking all of this out, I'll just go ahead and take another linebacker here, which I think is going to be the first surprise of the draft, Eli Lee, who, again, James Laurinaitis will like stop you in your tracks and, hey, don't forget about Eli Lee. And so this is one of those, all of the linebackers are now out of the picture, and they're all going to get their own opportunities. And Eli Lee, is he a middle linebacker? If so, then he's got Peyton Pierce and Arvell Reese in front of him, so he'll be getting some reps. And I think he's just the kind of guy that can lose his black stripe based on effort and tenacity and knowing where the ball is going, that sort of thing. So he was one I'm pretty sure I have him earlier on the board than most. And now as I look at it, like having that in having him in my top 5, and then competing not just against you, but also the listeners and the viewers and the subscribers, I'm feeling even better about it, because somebody has to come back. Somebody has to be like, these aren't all going to be the guys that we think are at the top. Like, somebody has to be the 17th guy that most people would pick is going to be the 4th guy that gets his black stripe off. And that's the guy I've just picked with Eli Lee. So then now, Tom, feel free to talk about this if you would like.
Well, yeah, I had him as certainly Tony will take 2 offensive players, and then I will be able to take 2 players, the second of whom is Eli Lee with my next group. So yeah, I like this a lot. There's a lot of ways you can get your black stripe off somewhat early. One of those ways is be a special teams assassin. Eli Lee sort of fits the special teams assassin kind of mold to me. Last year, Peyton Pierce lost his black stripe earlier than you probably would have expected. And then he was on kick coverage all year long. And that's, I think one of the big reasons why that I think that's a great pick there. Cause I think that's one, as you said, I think that the average person is probably going to go, who, what? That's not, you look at his recruiting rankings. He's not right at the top of the list, but he just sort of fits the profile of the guy who loses his black stripe earlier than you'd think.
So now, Tom, my dilemma is I have to go get a running back. I need a running back. And then it's like, well, do I take Turbo Rogers or Isaiah West? And then do I start doubting myself? You've picked the wrong guy, you idiot. That sort of thing, which is constantly in my mind. However, in talking with Carlos Lachlan about both of these guys, he said more words about Turbo Rogers than he did Isaiah West. Because I went through and I checked the transcript and I counted. And I think usually that's a pretty good indicator of who's going to lose a black stripe. I wonder if we were to actually do that. Certainly it would have worked last year with Jeremiah Smith. Personal preference, because he has played more running back than Turbo Rogers has, I'm going to go with Isaiah West. And I realize I'm going down the board on the recruiting rankings, but I'm going, like, my board does not reflect. I just don't recruit off of recruiting rankings. I don't put a board together just based off of recruiting rankings like some people, Tom. So I'm going with running back Isaiah West out of Philly, and he knows what a good sandwich is.
St. Joseph's Prep, same school that produced Marvin Harrison and Kyle McCord and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. and a whole bunch of other guys. That is a school that's produced a ton of talent, and now Isaiah West. That's a good pick. I thought for sure you were going to go Turbo Rogers over Isaiah West there, but listen, if you don't trust the transcripts, I don't know what to tell you. Like, if that's it, I'm like, wow, he's taking a very scientific approach. No, he's not. He's just okay. His choice involves Cheese Whiz once again. All right, that's fine. That's whatever works for you, bud. That's fine. Wow, I can't believe. I feel like this is a tremendous value pick headed my way at number 10 overall. Let's head down to Enterprise, Alabama, shall we, Tony, and take Zion Grady, defensive end. This just feels like someone who has a real opportunity to shine early. He's coming in. He's, again, like a not someone who necessarily needs to put on 20 pounds to be ready to play, to contribute. He's also at a spot where there's just not a ton of depth there. They lost 3 defensive ends off of last year's team, including both starters. You've got 2 guys who are coming in who are 2 guys who are coming back in terms of Kenyatta Jackson and Caden Curry, who've played a bunch, who are probably not going to play. They'll play a decent amount this spring, but they're not going to be out there for every single snap, because those are guys who are at this point veterans, have played meaningful snaps in national championship games. Like, and then behind them, it is wide open. There's a couple guys, Josh Mickens and Dom Kirks, who came back and are returning players, but did not play a ton last year. You got Logan George, who transferred from Idaho State. And then behind them, it's like, well, there's a lot of snaps available there. And this is where Epi Satanale not being there this spring means a lot of those snaps are going to Zion Grady. And he's someone who I think could take advantage of those. You're going up against, he's going to be going up against tackles who are going to be relatively new at playing tackle. He may have a chance to flash this spring. All of that. I looked at taking Zion Grady 4 picks ago. I thought he was certainly going to be off the board by now. This one feels like if anyone in this group is going to lose his black stripe, 4 spots, 5 spots higher than he was picked, I think Zion Grady might be that guy. Would you like to talk about how you're devastated by me having Zion Grady and you not?
I had him as my number 11 overall, so I could take him, I could leave him. No big whoop. I'm not concerned about it. Looking back over past defensive ends, Caden Curry lost his in the spring. I think he was the second guy in 2022. You had Edric Houston losing his in August 9th of last year. And don't go looking for one in 2023, because it's going to be hard to find with Josh Mickens in October. And we should also point out, we're going to stop counting these at the start of the season. That's come on. This is serious business. We're not going to take this into the season when we got other things going on. Get you guys playing, get their stripe gone before the game actually starts. Now, and Tom, here we get to the part of the show where you're still picking.
I am still picking. Yes, I am still picking. And now we're now through the guys who I looked at and thought kind of the next tier down. After this, you've got a lot of guys who are either young or raw in terms of not a lot of experience playing the position they're going to be playing, or probably need a year of development before they're ready physically to play, or just play positions where typically you don't see guys lose their black stripes that early. So this is kind of where the line is for me, where, there's lots of good choices here. And I think any of these guys could, but I think we're through most of the guys who I think very good chance this guy loses his black stripe before the season. So I am, Tony, I looked back at some of the previous years. The offensive line, Luke Montgomery lost his black stripe 4th last year. It is possible to do that as an offensive lineman. It's not easy. It does not happen often, but it is possible. That was, I guess, 2 years ago, Luke Montgomery lost his black stripe relatively early. And Ian Moore lost his black stripe relatively early last year. So with that in mind, I'm going to take Carter Lowe here, take a little bit of a flyer on Carter Lowe and see. I think you could see any of these guys any of the offensive linemen potentially lose their stripe before this season, but I think I'm going to say Carter Lowe has the best chance of the three. It's just, this is going to be a little bit of a, this is up to the position coaches, Tony. So it's an all new group of position coaches at offensive line. So maybe they'll be easy graders this year. Maybe they'll be impossible graders. We don't know. This is a little bit of a wild card pick here, but I think Carter Lowe is, again, like so much of this conversation is just, is this guy potentially ready physically to, handle this to at least some degree? Like, is he ready to be the starting offensive tackle at Ohio State? Absolutely not. Like, that's not a realistic expectation for any freshman not named Orlando Pace. But is he ready to potentially be some kind of contributor at some point this year in the, Donovan Jackson in the Bison package, or Josh Fryer in the Bison package, or Paris Johnson late in the season coming in as a guard? Like, yeah, I could see that potentially. So that's why I'm going with Carter Lowe with the 11th overall pick here.
I think it's a foolish pick because, Tom, you're talking about, yes, the assistant coaches are involved with this, and that new assistant coach is Tyler Bowen, who is going to have to be like, well, I need to be the strictest, most difficult judge of everything. So, like, I can't let anybody just coast. So he's going to be adding black stripes. He'll see Carter Lowe like pancake Kenyatta Jackson and be like, that's not good enough. Add a black stripe. And so you're going to see Carter Lowe out there with multiple black stripes. Pretty soon they're all good. The offensive line is just going to have black helmets. And it's like, are those the safety caps? Like, no, that's just black tape. That is like layers upon layers of black tape. So yeah, I would never touch an offensive lineman with a new offensive line coach. This is lunacy. Tom, I'm going to take Javen McFadden. No, I'm not. Not yet. Here's a guy that I just like, and that's slot receiver Dazee Jones, who is crafty and catches the ball and runs good routes. And stuff. He does stuff that coaches like. So if you do stuff that coaches like, this is an opportunity for a coach to reward somebody. And I assume he's going to be difficult to handle in terms of defending. And this is also where you get feedback from teammates as well, and opposing teammates. But also, if you've got Brandon Inniss in your corner, like, how can you lose? So I think that also helps. This helps my cause. Brandon Inniss is going to be fighting for me in this one with Dazee Jones, as long as he's doing his job, and I expect that he will. So I'm going to take Jones there. Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. We're now in the portion of the draft where it's like, what is this guy going to look like when he's going up against a college player on the other side of the line? And you're kind of in the, well, we'll see kind of portion of the draft. Perfectly acceptable pick here. Perfectly, we'll see. There's going to be potentially some opportunities there, as I'm guessing Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate are probably not going to be taking a ton of snaps, and they're probably going to be working a lot of those other guys in to see what they've got in terms of the wide receivers. And wide receivers a spot where you've seen guys work in during the course of the spring and get some meaningful reps. So yeah, I think that's a perfectly acceptable pick. I had him a little lower on my board, but not too far down. So I think that's a good pick.
I like that we're halfway through this draft and we're 33 minutes into the show.
Yeah. I was just looking at that and thinking, this is we're on pace for quite a show, Tony. I think that's.
And the thing is, like, when you get to the NFL drafting, like third round, it's like they it's just a scroll. So we're just going to be talking, and then you'll just see the scroll of who we pick next. I still have two guys ranked ahead of this guy, and that's a great way to do a board, by the way. Mm-hmm. A great way to do your draft. Never trust your instincts. So I'm going to trust my new instinct and take defensive tackle Jarquez Carter here, who Larry Johnson compared him to Mike Hall Jr. So like that means something to me. He's a quick, powerful 3-tech who is just the kind of guy that can disrupt things. And I think he's coming in big enough. He'll get bigger, but he's coming in big enough, but not so big. And he's also going to be pretty quick. And, given the offensive guards and the centers, whoever that may be, as they rotate in and out, some issues. So I'm going to take Carter there, who, I think he's going to be pretty good. So if he's going to be pretty good, why not be good early?
Yeah, that was the next guy I had on my board. This is the first time you've disappointed me. Well, that's not true. That's the first time that your choice has been the choice. Far from the first time you've disappointed me, Tony. But yeah, no, I think that's a great pick. He was, as I said, the next guy up on my board. Just, again, so much of this conversation comes down to, is he ready to go out and compete at this level right now to at least, you're going to get beat. Like, you're absolutely going to get beat. You're a true freshman. That's what's going to happen. Like, but are you good? Are you able to come out and look, be ready to compete at this level? I think he's someone who is. So yeah, I think that's a good pick. Boy, there's so many good choices left. How about Tony? Let's go with Nate Roberts,
Yeah,
tight
that's
end.
funny. Mhm.
I think he's someone who, came in relatively highly ranked. Tight end is a tough position to do this. This is probably higher than I should have. I should have picked a tight end, because that's a spot where, as Keenan Bailey says, you have to be able to catch like a Big Ten wide receiver and block Big Ten defensive ends like a Big Ten offensive lineman. That is a very, very tough spot to get on the field early. And frankly, it's just a loaded tight end room this year. They have so much talent in that tight end room. He's not going to play this year, but I think he's coming in. He's someone who I think, I was impressed with him when I saw him at camp a couple of years ago. He feels like someone who could come in and be, further along than you might expect from someone at the tight end position. And with Brody Lennon coming in the summer and not in the spring, it's like, well, there's only going to be one true freshman in the tight end room this spring, so that probably moves him up the list a little bit for me there. So, all right, we'll go with him.
I like that pick.
Yeah,
I like him.
yeah,
I
and
don't like the pick. I like him as a player.
yeah, yeah. And then, boy, there's so many good choices here. How about Tony? You know what? I'm going off the board here a little bit. Tony, we're gonna have our first summer enrollee here, Epi Satanale. I like him a lot as a player. I think there's an outside chance he's one of the rare guys who comes in the summer and loses his stripe during fall camp. Like, not, far from a guarantee there. He's not quite as physically developed as Zion Grady is, but it's close. It's not, they're within 5 pounds, at least on their recruiting profiles. They're listed as 5 pounds apart. I could see him coming in and, having and the opportunity to, again, not be buried on the depth chart behind a ton of like great experienced guys with tons and tons of snaps and tons of reps. So, this is very early to take someone who's coming in the summer, but I think this is something where there's a possibility he comes in and is very impressive early and, loses his stripe before the season.
I'm okay with that one. I have this bias against the summer enrollees, and if you go back and look, you really shouldn't. Like, you should go ahead and start reaching on some of those guys. But he's got a good frame, and he's going to get bigger. And just, you talked to Larry Johnson about him, and the way Larry Johnson talks about him, it's like, okay, all
Yep.
right. I'm going to have to put this one away for the Black Stripe draft. I, of course, did not. Tom, so now I've got 2 guys at the top that I've been not picking because I thought I could get them lower. And now I'm also thinking like, well, how much longer can I let it ride? And then who else would I take that I think will get their black stripes removed before them? And I don't know that I have anybody here. So my next guy is safety Cody Haddad, who is the kind of player that is just going to be running through everybody, and kind of reminds me like this is 40 years ago, like the world's toughest bouncer competitions with Mr. T, running through doors and bars and things like that. That's kind of who I see him as a player. But really physical and does stuff that coaches like. So I'm picking him. And then my next guy, Tom, and then I'll let you comment. Turbo Rogers is still on the board, so let's go get him and see what we can do there and see if he can't make some people look foolish on the field and Tom off the field.
That would have been my next pick. And I think both of those are good picks because of the special teams thing we talked about earlier. Like Turbo Rogers might be a special teams returner, sort of be in that mix for Ohio State. And then Cody Haddad fits that special teams assassin role that I talked about earlier with Eli Lee, just the kind of guy you might see blowing people up on kickoffs relatively early in his career. So yes, I think those are two very, very good picks for those reasons. And frankly, quite possibly would have been the next two guys for me as well. Now you've got a bunch of groups of two. You got a couple wide receivers, you got a couple interior defensive linemen, you got a couple offensive linemen, and you got a couple summer enrollees. And now it's just I'm very torn as to what I want to do here, because all of these groups are people that, now we're into guys who there's reason to think that they could lose their black stripes before the fall camp.
Mm-hmm.
I think of the guys left on the board, I'm going to say Phillip Bell is the most likely to lose his black stripe, wide receiver out of California. He's not Quincy Porter is the guy who is getting all of the attention in the class. And this is a group that Brian Hartline will put you out there. Brian Hartline will, if you're ready, Brian Hartline will take your black stripe away if you really are ready to contribute. The bar is pretty high in that room, but there's going to be some opportunity to shine this spring. And he's someone who I think has a real chance to, before the season, lose that stripe. Not someone I'm expecting to be the second guy in the class to lose a stripe by any means, but certainly there is an opportunity there. And then Tony, for my next one, how about Javon McFadden? I'm going. This is again very early to be taking an offensive lineman. I right now rattling around in my head is Ryan Day talking about him potentially being a tackle, and that's the stuff that I look at and go, okay, what do they see? What do they know that I don't know? What do they see and know that the recruiting services don't know? Like there's a lot of that was an evaluation that was made under a different offensive line staff, so that may not be the evaluation right now. But that's what is driving this pick. When there's okay, what do I not know kind of situation where it's like the coaches are talking about a guy in a way that doesn't line up with the other stuff that you're seeing. It's kind of like, all right, let's see. And he's another guy who was around the program a bunch. He was at all the games, in the lead up. I'm pretty sure I saw him at, in the indoor at the Woody in the lead up to the Tennessee game. And I think he's been around the team quite a bit as well, which it's just a little bit of a head start. But, at this point, like, I'll take it.
All right, that's pretty good. Back to the Phillip Bell we've talked about before, where Ryan Day compared him to Emeka Egbuka in terms of somebody who can play inside or outside and has the size to do both. Tom, I went and looked. Emeka Egbuka lost his black stripe in April as a freshman. One of 5 freshmen from the 2021 class to lose their black stripes in April in the spring. So, Tom, Jack Sawyer was the first. Marvin Harrison Jr. was the second. They lost on the same day. Travion Henderson on the 10th of April. Emeka Egbuka on the 13th. Do you know who also lost their black stripe from that 2021 recruiting class that same day as Emeka Egbuka?
Boy.
The answer is no, you do not.
Well, hang on. Now. The answer is I'm going to pull up the 2021 recruiting class because there are some names in here. Was it Jansen Dunn? One of the safeties lost his stripes very early. Was it Dunn or Turrentine?
You might be thinking of Kai Stokes the year after.
Yeah, okay.
It was Reed Carrico, linebacker for West Virginia.
All right.
Jesse Mirko lost it in the early mid-August as a true freshman. So neither here nor there. I'll cut all of that out, Tom. Don't worry.
Why would you cut it out? I got the answer wrong. That's the one you leave in.
It's going to loop it. It's going to be a 3-hour show. No, sorry, Tom. That is incorrect. It was Reed Carrico, linebacker, West Virginia.
Hmm.
Here you go. I'm going to go with the safety Deshaun Stewart, who played corner in high school. Ryan Day talked about him as a safety. I think he could be a big nickel type of thing. So his versatility and willingness to do whatever, I think, is going to bode well for him. And he's got good size. He's athletic. He's physical. So I think that'll all work out well for him, Tom. And my next one, I'm going to go, and hear me out on this. I'm going to go with Bod Penn Miller, the wide receiver, who is, everybody talks about how he's a project. And, he's a physically very gifted, becoming a receiver type of guy. And I think he's going to blossom and do well, and has the potential to light some people up and get some notice. And you know what? Let's get the black stripe off that guy.
Well, first of all, let me be the first to say that I don't know how I overlooked Deshaun Stewart on my list, but I just did not type his name down when I was going down the recruiting class list. So that's a steal for you. Congratulations. Yeah, boy, that's I don't know how I went straight from Jake Cook to Trajan Oden as I was going down that list, and that's a rough one, because he is, again, when you see those safeties, like, sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't in terms of like getting on the field really early, but that's the kind of spot where you can steal someone. Where last year you had who did you have? You had Jalen McClain, who you picked 15th overall last year and lost his black stripe there. Like that's a spot that's a great one. All right, so now I'm gonna just take the two interior defensive linemen who I held left, unless I missed someone else, Tony, which is always possible. I'm just gonna go with Maxwell Roy and Trajan Odom. These are guys who are both play at a position where it's not easy to lose your stripe early. That's not a spot where you typically see guys lose their stripe very early in their career. So I'll take them 22nd and 23rd. But, boy, if either of them lose them before the season, that's a real good marker for future production.
Yeah, and Larry Johnson has talked about Trajan Odom maybe being more of a developmental guy, and Max Roy coming off, I think, a knee injury in wrestling. So, but should be a good to go for fall camp. So, Tom, that leaves me with somebody who I also really like in this class, and that's tight end Brody Lennon, who won't get here until the summer. And I think it's going to be difficult because the depth chart is even deeper than the one that you'll have for Nate Roberts in the spring. So I'm going to go with Brody Lennon, and then the other guy, the last guy who gets here in the summer, and that's Jordan Woods, 6'3" corner, who there's potential there, but we'll see. Getting into summer is always difficult, and I had to weigh, Tom, as you'll talk with the last pick. Do I go with, do I stay away? Because poison, Peter with the offensive line a lot and this sort of thing, or do I go with the more athletic possibility? And of course, I chose the shiny object over the offensive lineman.
Yeah, the 26th pick is Jake Cook, who interior offensive line prospect out of Westerville. He's got a lot of the same benefits that Tavian St. Clair had, where you see him around the program a ton. Now, the offensive line it's a spot where there's just so much development required physically. And the other issue is, as an interior guy, Ohio State's interior offensive line is jam-packed this year. They've got really a good, solid 2 deep. So it's going to be hard to crack the 2 deep on the interior of the offensive line, even for some second year guys potentially. So this is a spot where it just, Jake Cook, I think, is someone who could have a very bright future on the interior of that offensive line, but just historically, offensive linemen tend to not lose their black stripes until fairly late in the season. Not even the first month of the season. Like there's a lot of offensive linemen, if you go back and look, losing their black stripes in like late October, November, even during bowl prep, you see that happen. And that's just a function of the position being an area where it takes a year of physical development, and then it takes a year of technical and skill development, and then you're usually ready like your third year. If you just sort of look at most Ohio State offensive linemen and their sort of general career trajectory, outside of the real freaks like Paris Johnson, who could maybe do it year one, or, Orlando Pace, the one we always go back to, or Michael Jordan, like these are, it is a real outlier if you're able to be a major contributor your first year. So yeah, it's not this is by no means a projection of down the road, kind of like, oh boy, that's not going to turn into anything. It's, it's just very much a function of offensive line takes a while. It takes a while for everyone. That's why all the offensive linemen, every year we do this, the offensive linemen are the last ones to get picked. And it's like, I want to make sure everyone understands. We're not saying we don't think they're good. We're saying this is what happens when you're an offensive lineman. You show up and then we say, we'll see you in 2 years. And that's generally how it goes.
We are realists. Mm-hmm. And I'm just looking at the picks here. Like, the only two guys I have on the line of scrimmage are Jarquez Carter and Brody Lennon at tight end, if you want to consider that the line of scrimmage. You've got all of the offensive linemen and the defensive linemen, and we'll see if that bodes well for you, or if my strategy of staying away from the line of scrimmage will work out. Generally, my strategies, well, Tom, we're out of time. I do like, if I'm looking at your board, I say the one pick I like the most, as I think about it now, is probably Tavian St. Clair, because of the amount of reps that he'll get. Now, this is assuming again that he's going to do well with them, but I do like that one. I could not get him though. I got 3 of my top 4, so I'll just have to take that. Tom, what's your favorite pick of my board there? Outside of like the top 2 or 3.
Yeah, outside. Yeah, I mean, I think Devin Sanchez is a great pick. Congratulations, well done taking the first overall. Well struck. Jarquez Carter, to me, 13th overall, feels like that's a guy who I think I could have taken him, a couple picks earlier. I would have been fine with that. Deshaun Stewart, Deshaun Stewart, Cody Haddad, like some of those guys who are just guys who sort of fit the profile. Like, they're not all going to hit, but you've got, between Deshaun Stewart, who you got at 20th overall, and Cody Haddad, who you got at 16th overall, like those are 2 lottery tickets where I don't know which one of them is going to hit, but one of them is going to end up being one of the first 8 in the class to lose his stripe. The other one might not be until 23rd. But you just, after doing this for a few years, you kind of look and you go, he sort of fits the profile of the type of guy who loses his black stripe, and everyone goes, really, already? But a lot of times that has to do with special teams.
Yep, and the depth chart ahead of them, and all of those. I factor all of these things in when I make my picks, so I don't want to get into it. It's proprietary, so I don't want to reveal everything. But there you go, black stripe draft. And you look, and we'll put our top 5s as you see them, and we'll put those on the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus, and see if you, viewers, listeners, subscribers, and you must be a subscriber, can compete with that. So go ahead and sign up if you have not yet. We'll have something good for you if you can be the top scorer overall.
We're going to score this the same way we score ours, where the first guy to lose his black stripe is worth 30 points. The second one is worth 25. And then after, it's 20, 19, 18, 17, 16. And you're going to pick your top 5. So Tony and I'll have, we'll probably have similar top 5s, but not exactly the top 5 that we have in this one, because we don't have to take turns picking on the board. So we'll have our personal top 5s. And whoever beats us with the highest score will get a prize. And we have some ideas. We have some fun swag we've picked up over the years at some major events and that kind of stuff. We'll have that, or a gift card or something like that. But just another way to make this kind of a little bit of fun.
Well, the concern here, Tom, is you're acting like only one person's going to beat us.
Well,
what happens
the
if 40 people
person
beat
with the
us?
highest score.
Okay,
So
that's what I'm talking. That's
and if
trying to
and
put that out there for you.
yes, and you can't put you can't, if 5 people pick the same exact guys in the same exact order, it's the first one who picks them. So you should hurry up and sign up today at BuckeyeHuddle.com.
Or you're all gonna have to split the $20 Roosters gift card. You're all gonna have to meet there. But no, we'll have something good for you guys. That will do it for us. Hit the thumbs up on the video if you're watching this on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel if you've not yet done so. And of course, hit the bell to be notified. And as we said, come find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We'd love to see you there. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys later.